Hello, my name is Major Mike Webb, and perhaps you have heard a phrase associated with an organization with which my godfather had been the president. A mind is a terrible thing to waste. Anyone who has taken the Amtrak train to 30th Street Station in Philadelphia at least may know the name of my godfather, who had been the first African American to serve as the chairman of the House Budget Committee, and the first African American to serve as the House Majority Whip in the U.S. House of Representatives as congressman from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Reverend William H. Gray III, an educator and a graduate of Washington and Jefferson College, a small private college in Pennsylvania, founded in 1781, a little bit after my college down the Shenandoah Valley. Like me, he was the son of a preacher man, coming from a long line of preacher men in his family. But unlike myself, Uncle Bill, as we most often called him, followed in the line of his fathers and their fathers before them, accepting a call into the ministry of the gospel. He had eulogized my father when he had passed, who had considered him as his son in the ministry. And even on that occasion, he had reflected upon the importance of obtaining a good, solid education. And in part, I began another quest to run for U.S. Congress. And I have to thank Reverend Bill Gray for that inspiration. However, it is another one of my father's dearest friends for whom I must grant credit for our current efforts in both state and federal courts, a man who bore the same family name as the Reverend Oliver Brown, who in 1954, in a landmark decision upon recruitment by the NAACP, would bring a case on behalf of his little daughter, Linda, with the able assistance of another man, also a litigator and friend of my father, who would later become the first African-American justice on the U.S. Supreme Court. Raymond Aloysius Brown, however, like my father, had been a local chapter president of the NAACP, and despite a rather cantankerous nature, had taken me under his wing while I was still a child to begin a study of litigation, practice, and jurisprudence. And let us just say that, like yet another one of my father's intimate friends, he also had a dream, but which had began in 1954 in that case before the U.S. Supreme Court, in which former Chief Justice Earl Warren had observed that today, education is perhaps the most important function of state and local governments. Compulsory school attendance laws and the great expenditures for education both demonstrate our recognition of the importance of education to our democratic society. Certainly, after a pandemic response that had left Virginia ranked 6th in the nation for learning losses in verbal and mathematical aptitude, compulsory attendance laws had taken a brief hiatus, which continues to plague many school systems in Virginia, with reports of high absenteeism and truancy. And comprising the largest single budget line item in just about every municipality in the nation, most often associated with not programs and instruction materials, but rather just personnel salaries. Most often the largest employer, larger than those employed in public safety, public health, law enforcement, and the judicial system combined. Even a free education today comes at a great expense, often paid from property taxes and through federal public grants and aid. And so even though education is required in the performance of our most basic public responsibilities, even service in the armed forces, and is the very foundation of good citizenship, most often when conversations in politics concern issues of education, in the background there is always somewhere the sound of money, and who gets it and who does not. Today, education may even be a principal instrument in awakening the child to cultural values, in preparing him for later professional training, and in helping him to adjust normally to his environment, which makes for good television and good commercials, but in politics and elections, where money talks and BS walks, nothing done without the power of money is ever accomplished. In these days, it is doubtful, however, that any child may reasonably be expected to succeed in life if he is denied the opportunity of education. We've all heard about pipelines to prison. We all know what happens when young people find disappointment. And in 1954, in a landmark decision, the Supreme Court had decided that such an opportunity, where the state is undertaken to provide it, is a right which must, in ministerial obligation, be made available to all on equal terms. In the last few elections, especially with reports of learning losses, education has been a salient issue for voters going to the polls to vote for their party candidates. But what you may have noticed is that the conversation has not been focused upon student achievement or even addressing achievement gaps persisting. Not even in the county of Arlington, where 90% of school-aged children do not attend private or parochial schools, despite median home values exceeding $850,000. School board meetings, usually sparsely attended, rather have been focused on what has been framed as those social issues. Provocative and enough to get people marching to the polls, but pertaining to as little as 0.23% of around 28,000 kids just in Arlington, 92% of whom report that they want to go to college. Not that they want to choose their personal pronouns, not that they want to participate in extracurricular activities, or that they want to use a particular restroom. And what happens to those dreams deferred for those little kids and their preferences for what they want to do with the rest of their life? Their real dreams, their real desires, their real hopes. That question is one reason why for the past few years and still today, I have been making arguments to the courts. And the reason why, again, I am running for U.S. Congress. The landmark decision in Brown v. Board of Education had said that such an opportunity, where the state has provided to undertake it, is a right which must be made available to all on equal terms. Education, reading, writing, and arithmetic. The state laws defining the duties and responsibilities of elected school boards says absolutely nothing about encouraging civic engagement, promoting free speech, or even providing a culturally aware community. You can do that in your church. But rather, in ministerial obligations, states that each local school board shall evaluate the division superintendent annually consistent with the performance objectives for academic achievement. And in the last few weeks of the election, lost in the noise, it had been announced that for years, Virginia had the lowest cutoff scores in the nation, doing a Ferris Bueller, enabling them to boast that around 80% of the students had been passing their standards of learning tests, when in fact, in reality, not in your dreams, that after calibrated to normal standards being used across the nation, as many as 57% of these students were actually failing. They are graduating kids unprepared to attend college or read or write, and untrained to obtain a job, and especially passing the buck and the remaining responsibility onto that inadequately educated child, which most times does not end in a success story. Life ain't no movie. However, in 1970, the cantankerous attorney Raymond Brown got another crazy idea when the Supreme Court had decided the case Goldberg v. Kelly. I was just in kindergarten at the time. That was the case. It was about some terminated welfare benefits, but in which for the first time, entitlement benefits were recognized as a property-like right. Property-like right. Entitled to at least some level of due process. Due process in a hearing before termination. In other words, if your child is not receiving their entitlement to an education, you are entitled to a hearing. But very few parents go into court. However, while obtaining a day in court can't always go either way, win, lose, or draw, because an opportunity to be heard does not mean that an answer will always be yes. Under the Fifth Amendment, some are familiar with what have been called the takings cases. And if you are deprived of your property by any action of the government, then we can definitely prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you have been deprived. To what are you entitled? Just compensation. This is just the Hawkins v. McGee hairy hand case from the paper chase with Dr. Kingsley. What is the difference between that which you were promised and that which you received? And that is the argument that in a case of first impression is being made currently in both state and federal courts. We shall also be proposing this idea to the newly elected administration in Richmond, as well as to the elected legislators in Washington. A little girl in a church choir I had once dated in high school became very famous for a song. I believe the children are the future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. I am Major Mike Webb, independent for U.S. Congress. You may not be ready for this, but I promise your kids are going to love it. This message was approved by Major Mike Webb. Honest.